Ruhama, the Kombucha Mama. How are you? So good to see you here. I'm going to go wave at some folks. Thanks for being here. So today is an Ask Mama Anything. Woo woo. You got questions, I got answers. And if you don't have questions, I'm going to scroll through some recent questions to the Kombucha Camp blog and answer those live. So you have questions on fermentation, on kombucha, on jun, kombucha's raw honey cousin, on milk kefir, water kefir, any kind of fermentation. You're a small business and you want to know how to scale up. I am here to answer those questions. Hannah Ruhama, the Kombucha Mama, been doing this for 20 years, president of the Trade Association. I absolutely love supporting small family businesses. I love reuniting people with nature and helping them to get healthy simply by making different choices. And those choices start with microbes. Microbes are magic. And let me explain what I mean by that. Microbes are magic. Why do I say that? Well, think about a really good magic trick. What is the key to a magic trick being successful? You cannot see what is happening, and yet you witness what seemingly is impossible. And that's what I mean by microbes are magic. They work in a way where it is not discernible to our naked eye what is happening inside of our bodies when we're interacting with these microbes. However, we are witnesses to how they make us feel and the energy they give us. You know what, guys? I'm also reading a book, The Secret Life of Plants. It's an oldie, but a goodie. And it is so fascinating. And it has reinvigorated my relationship with all of the nature around me. So I spent this weekend sitting in my backyard just communing with the grass, with my willow tree, with the hydrangeas, with the lemon tree. So just letting myself be in nature and connect with my plants. I've connected with my house plants. So there is energy in everything. And the more that we acknowledge that energy, the more it responds to us. And so, we need to clear away the mythology that human beings are only capable of communication through our mouths and through words. In fact, we are constantly communicating with the world around us. And it's, are we paying attention? So yes, you are receiving messages from spirit. Yes, you are having ESP with people you love. Yes, you are in communion with your pets, with your plants, with everything around you. So the sooner we accept the fact that we are these amazing divine beings living in this beautiful energy matrix, the sooner we can learn how to use our skills in a different way to elevate the frequency and vibration of this planet. And so I think of kombucha as this gateway in. It's opening up its doors. It has tangy, fruity flavors. It's a medium for medicinal purposes, right? Kombucha becomes this great matrix that we can infuse ginger and ashwagandha and all of these other herbs and plants that have great health benefits for us. And we can make these delicious, yummy ways of consuming nature and allowing her to support us from within. So any questions, please feel free to drop those here. I'm going to go and start pulling up some questions from the old K-Camp blog. So definitely drop them here if you have any questions. So, someone is saying, I killed my SCOBY, leaving it long in the fridge and not maintaining it. Can I compost it? And more importantly, will a vinegar SCOBY serve? Oh, I see. Can I use a vinegar SCOBY? Okay, so we have a little rule here about our SCOBY hotel, and that is we don't like to put it in the fridge. And there's a good reason for this. I know we think of the refrigerator as this place for preservation, but imagine this. All of human history, we did not have access to refrigerators. We didn't have electricity. We would go to the lake in the winter and carve out blocks of ice. And so what did we have instead? Well, we had fermentation, nature's preservative means of creating preservation. And so when we put a SCOBY hotel or put our SCOBYs into dormancy, a couple ways we do it. First, by putting it in the cold because they are temperature sensitive. Or if we just don't feed them for a long period of time. Yes, they will hang out in stasis, and provided they have enough liquid, we won't see any immediate mold. However, they are living beings just like us. And if we don't feed them, they're not going to immediately dive into a fresh pot of sweet tea and be able to function the way that they normally do, right? They've slowed down. They've been in stasis. And this is why if we are working with a mother culture, and what I mean by that is an old mother is if you're a commercial brewer and you have an old mother, and that's where you get all of your starter liquid, we need to keep her fresh. We need to keep flow and fluidity going there. So we can keep a SCOBY indefinitely, but we do need to feed it from time to time. So even if you're just, in the olden days, we imagine grandmother, everybody's drinking cups of tea. You've got little dregs of these tea and you just pour a little bit of that tea into your kombucha hotel. Add a little sugar to it and put it in there. Now we're just stimulating those microbes with the nitrogen in the tea, the caffeine in the tea, and a little bit of that sugar. So here's the thing. You can potentially revive a cold SCOBY or one that's been left for a long time, but we have to do it gradually in stages, right? We have to reintroduce the notion of food, allow it to demonstrate if it's going to thrive or die. And the way we know it's quote unquote died is it's going to manifest mold. So if you take that SCOBY hotel out of the fridge, if you take it off the shelf where it's been sitting for too long, just go ahead and make a small amount of sweet tea. This could even be like 8 ounces of tea in a teacup with a tablespoon of sugar, and pour that into your vessel. And then when you see new growth starting, that's how you know you're starting to wake everything up. Then at that point, let's take some SCOBY out, take some liquid out, and start that refresh process. So we do also with our SCOBY hotel want to filter out some of the excess yeast. You'll notice because it'll be really cloudy at the bottom, it'll be dark and murky, and it might even smell a little funky. And so taking all of our SCOBYs out, filtering that liquid, letting a lot of that excess yeast go, and then putting that liquid back into the jar along with some fresh sweet tea can help us to revitalize the SCOBY hotel. So that is what I recommend if you have some SCOBYs hanging out that need a little love. And this is true for your Jun as well. So if your Jun's been hanging out and needs a little love, just give it a little honey tea and it will start perking right back up. Now, the truth is we can even potentially do this with our kefir grains. In fact, I keep a sort of continuous brew milk kefir in my fridge, and I use it for making all of my baked goods. So I love to use milk kefir in baked goods because it gives this beautiful rise. We get this, amazingly heavenly pancake. If you haven't tried it, go to the kombuchacamp.com blog, look up milk kefir pancakes, oladyi, I believe they're called in Russia. And they are so delicious. What's really nice about them is they have this natural tang to them so that when you're putting on your syrups or your jams, your sweet stuff, you have this nice contrast between tangy and sweet. It isn't just, cake on sugar and cake and so forth. So truly delicious, highly recommend it. Same with our water kefir grains, right? And so with the water kefir grains, what happens are the tibikos is they'll start to break apart and disintegrate and they look like sand. And you're like, oh no, I can't find my grains anymore. But in fact, they're still there. They're just in that minute seedling form. And so again, if we work with them consistently, feeding them on a regular basis, making sure they're at the proper temperature, we can often find that they will recover. It's just a lot of folks often don't have patience or they're not sure what they're looking for. But if you have the patience, you really can revive a culture for the most part. Again, if it has mold, and we know it's mold because it's fuzzy, it leaves powder on your finger, because sometimes we'll look at a SCOBY or whatnot and we'll think, what is that? I'm not sure. And you go and you touch it and it's completely smooth and there's nothing on your finger. Well, it's probably just a yeast formation under a translucent SCOBY or something like that. Of course, you're always welcome to take photos and send them to us. We're happy to take a look and help you discern what you're seeing. All right, drop your questions here. Happy to answer those live for you. I'm going to go back and find, Aha, here's one. This is a classic question. Kombucha Brazil! I love it. My kombucha doesn't seem very carbonated. Sometimes I get a small psst. I'm using store-bought bottles with screw tops. I also use some flip-top bottles. What am I doing wrong? There's a simple formula for carbonation in kombucha, and that is yeast plus nutrients for the yeast in a tightly capped bottle. Why is this the formula? Well, plus temperature. So the yeast are going to ferment whatever nutrient we're giving them. So that could be a little bit of sugar, it could be some fruit juice, it might be ginger, and then it's going to create a gas, right? Many of us grew up drinking soda, myself included, and you buy a 2-liter of Coke, and then the lid would get left off, and all of a sudden, it turns into the nasty brown, gross syrup that it is. And it's not delicious to drink, and all the gas has gone away. And so remember, with kombucha, this is natural effervescence. A lot of commercial brands will force carbonate because they're looking to create a consistent experience for their customer. It's probably a combination of both natural effervescence and some forced carbonation. Because here's the thing, carbonic acid, which is what you're using to create the carbonation, does create a change in both mouthfeel and flavor profile. So if you are forced carbonating your kombucha as a commercial producer, you need to take into account that flavor before and after, and through experimentation, find when's the right time to infuse that CO2, because it will change the flavor profile. That's why I advocate labeling it. I think there's a lot of folks who overconsume carbonic acid or, forced carbonation, and that can lead to some discomfort in the body. So I always think it's best to be transparent and put that on the label so that people can kind of pick and choose what works for them. That said, there have been brands that they advertise, we are solely effervescent or low carbonation, and that really hits a sweet spot for some people. So it's all about choosing what makes sense for you. But when you're brewing at home, right, we still need to get yeast and sugar together in a tightly capped environment so that we can allow the gas to form and then capture it in the bottle. So you want to make sure that, so here's what's happening. You've got your jar, you're going to pour it into your bottles. Well, what you might do is after you take out that SCOBY, take a spoon and stir all of the yeast that's on the bottom. Stir it up. Little darling, stir it up. Yeah, stir that yeast. That's going to cause it to all sort of flow into the different liquids, different parts of the liquid, so that when you're pouring into your bottles, you make sure you're getting some yeast in every bottle. Now with that fruit juice, with that ginger, with that little bit of sugar at room temperature, or maybe it's on a heater, depending on how warm or cool your space is. Of course, we're heading into summer here. Yeah, exactly, Junio. Junio, stir it up. As we're heading into the warmer temperatures here in the Northern Hemisphere, this is when we sort of enter bottle bomb season, if you will. So we just want to be paying attention to our bottles. Where are we storing them? Are we hearing any, which can indicate an excess buildup of pressure? And then, of course, when we go to open our bottles, we're doing it in a really safe manner. But that is how we get the ever elusive fizz. And sometimes what will happen is some bottles will have some bottles won't. But usually that's if you're not mixing the yeast and making sure you get that even distribution, that's when you're going to have a bit more inconsistency. So please drop any questions you might have for commercial brewing of kombucha, jun, milk kefir, water kefir, for any fermentation troubleshooting tips. We're happy to help over here. Let me scroll down and find another. Talking about label removal, because I love to reuse bottles from the store. That's my favorite way to do it. Actually, we buy a tall bottle. So we do ours in a 750 ml and have for many, many years, because we drink a lot of kombucha here. Plus then when we give it away, people love having a nice tall bottle. Ooh, maki. That's a berry, right? It's pretty tasty. Dried fruit. Yes, yummy. Yeah, I tried maki mint. So this is where kombucha gets super fun and creative, is you can find all kinds of fruits and herbs and things, especially that are natural to your environment. Like I started by looking at what was growing in my garden or what could I get at the farmer's market that week. Yeah, so for the, if you're home brewing, then I like to put them directly because there's other elements to the berry. There's some fiber, there's just other nutrients in there that can potentially be passed on to you or create a healthy environment for your microbes. And then you just strain them out at the time of drinking, unless you want to do a longer bottle process. So for example, when we're doing our home brew kombucha, well, you may not need sugar because the fruit already has some sugar in it. And here's what happens is, like, if your kombucha is already at the delicious spot, adding more sugar isn't going to make it sweeter. It's actually going to make it more sour because you're going to drive more acid production. Okay, so if you're selling it artisanally, then there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you can infuse with the fresh berries or the dried berries, and then strain them out. And that, again, is going to get really great flavor for you, but it will create a little bit of a mess. And so that's where some folks may decide to juice it or pulverize it, right? Or get it into some format where then they don't have to strain it out later. But when you're starting early on and it's an artisanal kombucha, you might find that that is a great way to go. And I was going to describe how we make our kombucha here at home for Hannah's Homebrew, which is to say, we brew our kombucha, we harvest it when it's still a little bit sweet, and then we flavor it and infuse it. Like, we just take the whole SCOBY out and we immediately dump in our fruit, our flavorings, whatever we like. We leave it and infuse it for 2 days, 3 days. Then we strain it out into the bottles and we let those bottles age for another couple of weeks. So we have a really lengthy process here. It creates a lovely, delicious flavor, a light bubble. Sometimes it can be a lot of bubbles. I admit the bottles I've been opening these days have just been gushers, which are lovely, although you do end up losing quite a bit of liquid. But again, we make enough here that we get to enjoy it. So it's really fun. But that can be a way you can make it as well. So many people, though, at home, because they're going through it so quickly, they don't have the time, they don't have the patience, they don't have the space maybe to store it. So they're going to brew it right until the perfect flavor, infuse with your juice and fruit. A couple days later, you're just down in those bottles. So there's many different ways we can make our booch and make it taste delicious. And that's the joy of being a craft beverage, right? All right. Any other questions? Let's see. Boop. Okay, let's talk about added sugars, because this is something that consumers get confused about all the time. They go and they look at the bottles of kombucha and they go, I want the one. Oh, Brooch, I'm just reading your message here. We know a way to help with storage. All right, are you going to share? Let us know what that is so that we can hear that. Is it just cold temperatures, or you have a preservative? How are you helping with storage? But yes, this is what I'm going to talk about, added sugars, because it's so confusing for people. So they look at the back of the kombucha label and they think, oh, I want the one that doesn't have added sugars. Well, here is the silly little rule that we have to follow. And that is because kombucha uses sugar as the primary fermentation substrate. Even if you're measuring the amount of sugar at the end of fermentation, you have to list all of that as added sugars. So what are some of the brands doing to get around it? Well, Synergy Kombucha is brewed with kiwi juice. And since kiwi juice is a fruit juice, it's not considered the same as sugar, and therefore they don't have to add it to the total grams of sugar. So when you're looking at a Synergy and it says 0 grams of added sugar, that's because they're not using sugar in the primary fermentation. They're using kiwi juice. Yes, Mark, this is a great tip. Putting fruit in hop spiders is a great way to straining. So this is a wonderful tool from the beer brewing industry, because you want to, if you're dry hopping, meaning the hops are dried, and you want to put them right into the liquid, they have stainless steel baskets, essentially. And we can put our fruit and other flavorings for kombucha in those baskets and drop those into the batch as well. Like Mark is saying, a much easier alternative to then trying to strain those out, because they're all sort of like in a giant tea ball, if you will. But the added sugars is just challenging, because here's the reality. The sugar in kombucha is already fermented. That means it's broken down from its disaccharide nature into those monosaccharide components, which has that lower glycemic impact on the body. So if you're looking at an energy drink or a juice or a soda and you're comparing it to a kombucha, you're not looking apples to apples, right? So think about it like this. It's the teaspoon of sugar that helps the medicine go down. What we want are those acids, because that's what's supporting our body and digestive process. We want the living microbes, whether they're prebiotic, probiotic, postbiotic, symbiotic, it doesn't matter. The reality is they're biotic, they're alive, and so are you. And so consuming things that are alive for living beings is just naturally going to give you a rush of energy and nutrients that your bodies can instantly utilize and uptake. And so that's I think it's a confusing point for a lot of folks. But even if it says added sugars, just keep in mind that it doesn't mean you're getting, like how you see those sugar cubes comparisons for the orange juices and the sodas. It's not the same. So you can rest easy that even though your kombucha looks like it has more sugar than you would normally consume, keep in mind all the other benefits you're getting from consuming it, not just that there's a little bit of sugar. I'm a big fan of sugar. Here's why. We've been tricked into thinking it's better living through chemistry. And I'm not saying there isn't a place for things generated in the lab. However, we're trying to outsmart evolution here, right? Like we have evolved with sugar. It's a grass from a cane plant that we've been cultivating for over 5,000 years. And you know what happens when you consume too much sugar? You get a feedback loop. You get a tummy ache. You don't feel good, right? Like there is a physiological reaction that happens when you have too much sugar, right? But if you're consuming these, 0-calorie sweeteners, aspartame, sucralose, which never leaves the human body, any of these sort of chemical sugars, even though they have 0 calories, what's happening is your body cannot process or digest these in the same way. And there's no feedback loop that's getting triggered. And so you get tricked into over consuming these products that have 0 calories, but are incredibly detrimental to your health, to your well-being. They're addictive. And so I always recommend a 30-day kombucha challenge. We have a 30-day kombucha nutrition reset. It's a free email series we have for you. So if you go to kombuchacamp.com, type in 30-day reset, and you will find that email series. And in it, we help you swap that soda, swap coffee, just one thing, right? Like I'm a fan of drinking all the things in balance, right? That means I still enjoy my coffee. Lately, I've been having guayusa, which is a relative of yerba mate, and that's actually been really mellow and enjoyable. But I do like my coffee a couple times a week. So that said, if you're feeling like you're out of control with any certain food, because certainly that happens. We get into a state and we get into a rut, we overconsume something, and now our bodies are feeling really yucky, and we want to let that go. So this is where kombucha can really come in and be that, hey, I need that 3 o'clock snack, have a kombucha. I need that, that rush of energy, have a kombucha. It's got those B vitamins in living form. And so that's a really great way to kind of do just a natural reset on your body. And so swapping out a soda, an energy drink, a snack that you're used to having on a daily basis for kombucha you'll notice a difference. So definitely recommend that. And you know what's really lovely? There's so many kombuchas now on the marketplace, and they have a range of flavor profiles. And there's also water kefir. So we're starting to see more and more water kefir, Tibicos, probiotic soda. And it's different from the probiotic sodas that are just dosing with a probiotic pill. Like again, here, I'm always going to come back to fermentation. This is how human beings evolved. We co-evolved with bacteria and microbes. We aren't supposed to have single strain or 2 strains that will survive the gut and blah, 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 right? Because now we're just monocropping again. Because you get Bacillus coagulans in your potato chips, and you get them in your kombucha, and you get them in your, blah, blah, blah. So you've got this probiotic, sexy word thrown about everywhere, but it's actually just a single strain, and now you're monocropping. So again, diverse range, diversity, that is what leads to the best health outcomes, is diversity. Why? Because that is why we live on this beautiful planet, this gorgeous paradise that we have the privilege, the distinct privilege of living in, provides us with a variety of ways for us to enjoy our nutrients. Okay, I'm going. So any questions, drop them here, please. I am also scrolling through the blog at kombuchacamp.com and looking for questions so I can answer them for you here. So please go ahead and drop your question. Oh my gosh. So here's one that we get all the time. Is like, I bought a Scoby from you and I forgot all about it. It's been sitting in the cupboard for like a year. Can I still use it? And the short answer is yes. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier about maintaining our Scoby hotel and what to do with dormant cultures. So if you have it in its original packaging, definitely go ahead and start using it as soon as you can. The sooner the better. But what you might do is do a half batch. So the same amount of Scoby and starter liquid in a half batch of the sweet tea, again, just to help it wake up a little bit, because that first batch might take a really long time. It might not get as sour as it's supposed to. Your Scoby might be thin, and that's just because it's been starving. It's so hungry. So it's not up to its maximum ability to produce. And so again, gradually feeding it, nurturing it, loving it. And of course, if you don't have the patience, go ahead and get another Scoby and just make sure you use it as soon as it comes. But you definitely can revive those. Kefir grains are just a bit more fickle, right? Like they just are not as robust or hard. They can be though, and this is the part where it's like you just have to give it a try. Sorry, I was looking over here and figuring it out. So if you have a question, drop it here. Right now I'm just looking at, okay, here's one. Do you use fresh ginger? If so, approximately how much? Thanks. So this is what I love about kombucha. It's so versatile. All these fermented drinks, so versatile. We can use fresh, we can use dried, we can use powdered, we can use dehydrated, we can use juice. So every aspect, every form in which our flavorings can take, you can have extracts, right? So there's all different kinds of ways. Now they're going to yield different types of properties. This is why I'm a fan of using pieces of whole things, because I feel like there's probably stuff in there, whether we know it or not, that's exerting a positive effect on our bodies and the microbial colonies, etc. So I feel like there's a mutual benefit to using whole pieces of stuff. That said, I use all kinds of iterations of fruit and flavors when I'm coming up with things. So, and it's less is more when it comes to flavoring, because kombucha has acetic acid, meaning it's like vinegar, because it has these trace amounts of alcohol, which are a solvent and a preservative in kombucha. It's very effective at extracting those flavor profiles right from what you're infusing it from. And this is why, like if we use citrus fruit, we don't want to put in the peel or the pith, because it's bitter, and the kombucha will do a great job of enhancing that bitterness. And so that's where we would zest the rind if we wanted a little bit of that floral note. We can also use the juice, and in fact, lemon, grapefruit. It's so interesting. You put sour into kombucha, it actually tastes really good. It doesn't make it more sour. It actually has a really nice flavor. Cinnamon sticks. So we sell cinnamon chips. So these are bigger pieces of it, makes it easy. You could do a powder. Powder sometimes will separate those, so that can be a little tricky, but using the slightly larger pieces of bark is definitely a great way to infuse that flavor profile in and just get creative, like have fun. But if you're putting in like even 5% juice is a lot of juice. 10%, way too much. What'll happen is you'll cause it to be too fizzy, and then like I was sharing earlier, it's just all going to fizz out of your bottle. You're not going to enjoy any of it, or you could create a bottle bomb. So we just need to be really smart about how much fermentable sugar we're putting into those bottles in that bottling phase. So less is more. You'd be amazed at how little you actually need to create a delicious flavor profile, which just saves you money in the long run. But I love cutting up things that are fresh in season. I like the smell of that. I like to put that in there, and then we just strain it out and enjoy. So there's lots of different ways. There's 260 flavoring inspirations in the Big Book of Kombucha. Plus we have loads of recipes at the kombuchacamp.com blog. Sign up for our newsletter. We'll even send recipes to you. All right, we got time for about two more questions. So if you have any, drop them here. And if not, I'm just going to go through and keep hunting for some off of the K-Camp blog. Here, someone's asking about coconut water and secondary fermentation. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? So this is another great place to look for inspiration for whatever reason. There's, everyone's coming up with new flavors. So just take a look at your, favorite brand at the grocery store or at the farmer's market, see what flavors they're using, and you can get some inspiration that way as well. And then I like to go, in our book, there's Ayurvedic blends. You could go to traditional Chinese medicine. So anyone who's well-versed in herbalism, Nasala Kombucha used to be, was co-founded by an herbalist initially. They're now out of the business, but they would do things like catnip and St. John's wort and really like interesting flavor profiles that are tied to herbalism. So don't be afraid to get creative. Go out into nature, harvest some wild elderflowers and whatnot, and you can make some really lovely, amazing, tasty kombuchas, water kefirs, juns, etc. Ancient kombucha is excellent as a moss killer on pavement, and the results last for months. It's also good as a weed killer. So so this is what I like to say about kombucha. Snout to tail, we can use every piece of it. So even if you let that kombucha sit there on your countertop and you don't want to revive it, what do? Even if you pour it down the drain, now you have a free drain cleaner, right? Because those acids are going to loosen up any gunk on the pipes. That's in fact what they're doing in your body. Those acids are coming through, they're removing biofilms, they're helping your body to digest, get the engine flowing again. And however, it's milder than vinegar. So you're not getting that same intensity as you would if you were using an actual vinegar. And so it can be this great like mild pesticide, mild herbicide that's not going to have a negative impact on your soil microbes and is going to be in harmony with nature. That's another thing we can do. We can take those Scobys and compost them. So whether we're tossing them right into the compost heap, giving them to chickens who are going to fight over them because they absolutely love that bacterial cellulose, other animals and pets. Now, we don't want it to be their sole diet. It is insoluble fiber. In fact, humans can eat the Scobys. Scoby fruit leather is one of our favorite ways, or jerky. So what is insoluble fiber? Well, it's like that psyllium husk you take to keep yourself regular. Except when so our bodies doesn't digest it, but it comes through and it sweeps out excess sugar, excess hormones, and keeps everything running smoothly as it should. Plus, when we make the fruit leather out of it, we're using half the amount of fruit as you would in a regular fruit leather. So it has lower sugar, it's got great texture, it's super yummy, and we're starting to see some of these Scobie snacks appear in the marketplace. Not in a major grocery store yet, but I've definitely seen, brands here and there for their local communities. And they're just really fun to play with and get super experimental. So there's just lots and lots of uses for our kombucha, for humans, for pets, for household, for beauty, right? I would like to do a Scobie mask. So whether I'm putting kombucha vinegar into clay and spreading that on my face, getting the power of both the clay and the kombucha. I love that one. My face turns bright red. It pulls all the circulation, causes the blood, then refreshes all of the nutrients on your skin, leaves it super soft and glowing. Or I'll take an old Scobie, pop, and place it right over my face. Use a towel to catch the drips. And again, same thing. You'll see some red splotches, but usually that goes away fairly quick because it's just the function of pulling that circulation to the surface of the skin. And then, of course, the acids in kombucha are breaking the bonds of the dead skin cells. So, right, you've got dead skin cells here. That mild acid, super mild, like more mild than a chemical acid peel, right? This is a natural acid peel that you can do that isn't going to damage your skin potentially in the way that a chemical could. And it leaves it so soft. There's just something about about that vinegar aspect that softens the skin and leaves it really nice. Now, I used to work barehanded in my kombucha all the time because I just love to feel the Scobies, but what I noticed is my nail beds would end up really dark. So, pluses and minuses there. Of course, commercial manufacturers are always going to use gloves because food safety is what's most important when you're selling products to the public. At home, of course, you can do what you like. Boiling advice and oil commission. Can make soap with it. We can make a sourdough starter with it. Make cocktails and mocktails. Oh my gosh. I made one this weekend with rum. I think I used a little too much rum. So I kept adding more kombucha to it, but it was really tasty with cherries. Oh my gosh. I love fresh fruit in there. Hello. So please drop any questions you might have. I think we've got time for one more. I'm just scanning through the comments over at the Kombucha Camp blog. So that's another way if you have questions, you can always drop them there. Nice. Blog has insightful content. Yay, we love that. Fruity black tea. Okay, so yeah, we get this question a lot about the tea and what to use in primary. Here's the reality. We can ferment anything with kombucha. It's an incredibly flexible technology. The question is, what is your goal? Is it just to experiment? Great. Then you want to make sure you have that Scoby hotel, that you've got a place where your mother can always be in tea and sugar. We always want to protect our original mother in tea and sugar because that is the food that keeps her healthy and strong. From there, I mean, there's even research papers on putting a Scoby into milk, making a sort of kombucha milk kefir, if you will. Obviously, completely different microbes, going to have a different texture and flavor profile, but we can also do that. We see loads of papers and studies looking at the nutritional enhancement when we infuse things like sour cherry juice. We get more glucuronic acid when we infuse various different herbs that are endemic to or local to these different places where they're studying it. We see these additional health benefits. And so when they're doing these rat studies or nutritional analyses, what they're finding is that the fermentation process is enhancing the nutritional value. And so when we say only use unflavored tea in primary, again, we're giving you the basics. We're helping you understand the basic rules, the basic parameters that kombucha loves. Once you understand those basics, now you're free to color outside the lines and get as creative as you like. So while we wouldn't recommend chai tea for your very first batch, it's something you can do down the road. And the benefit to infusing flavor in the primary fermentation is that it can potentially limit the amount of alcohol you're creating because you're not re-fermenting when you add additional flavors like you could be when you're infusing with fresh fruit. Now, for my money, the trace amounts of alcohol, and I say trace because look, here's the reality. The definition of alcoholic beverage in the United States was dictated by those from the Christian temperance movement who felt all alcohol was negative. And so we have this very puritanical viewpoint of what alcoholic beverage means. The reality is human beings have been fermenting and making what are called small beers. So these would be up to about 2% alcohol by volume, fermenting flowers, fermenting ginger, fermenting all kinds of things we find in nature and consuming them, and everybody drank them to great benefit. And so when we're making kombucha at home, there are trace amounts of alcohol that are created. Now, here's what the alcohol is doing. First and foremost, preservative, right? When you get a wound, you rub rubbing alcohol on it to kill the bacteria. And that's exactly what it's doing. It's creating a protective layer for your kombucha. It's also not intoxicating, and this is why we see kombuchas considered halal in places like Indonesia, because it isn't creating an altered state of being, even though there's trace amounts of alcohol. And so this has led me over time to realize, because we've been fermenting and consuming alcohol and fermented foods and drinks since the dawn of time, is that perhaps we need some amount of alcohol. And if we don't get it in these trace forms, and so this is where I would say like unfiltered beer, biodynamic wine, these are products that haven't been pasteurized, they haven't had sulfites added, they haven't killed off the living nutrients. And when we consume those beverages, first of all, we tend to consume them in more balance. And we also don't overconsume them typically. I'm not saying you don't get drunk every once in a while on them, but the reality is the body has this feedback loop that then sort of, it's like, okay, I got the nutrients I was looking for. Now I don't need that. Because what happens is the longer you drink kombucha, the less alcohol you can tolerate. It's really fascinating. And kombucha supports a healthy liver. And so I like to say it's got a little antidote with the poison. This is why I love making cocktails and mocktails with it, because it's going to support your body with processing out xenobiotics. It's a great chelator. It's helping us to remove toxins that have built up over time in our bodies. And it's going to counterbalance any sort of like distilled spirits or something that is more that higher octane alcohol content. All right, Junio, I see your question. My Scobys is dirty with tea powder. Should I take it out? Well, it just might be that you don't need to. It's going to come out when you strain it anyways. But you don't need to pick the pieces off the Scoby. It could be that you want to use a larger leaf tea as opposed to something that's so inexpensive, because the better quality tea, guess what? The better quality your kombucha. It's just like grapes, right? If we use the cheap grapes and the cheap grape juice, we're going to end up with wine that doesn't taste very great. If we use better quality wine, but they're coming from healthy soils, we're just going to end up with a better tasting product. And the same is true of kombucha. And I get it. A lot of folks have been price driven, and so they want the cheapest. They think the cheapest is the best. This is, capitalism 101. Value is only calculated by the amount of dollars coming out of your bank account, when in reality, the value of having a higher quality product is that you're going to get a better experience, a better flavor, and just you're going to feel better consuming it. So, well, thanks everybody for joining us today for Mama Monday. I had fun. I hope you did too. We'll be posting this later on YouTube. And of course, we're going to have full episodes for you in our Kombucha Camp Plus Bubbles with Benefits program coming soon. We're super excited. You're going to get points, reward points for every purchase. You'll have birthday club. We're going to have full length episodes. We're super excited to debut that to you later this month. And thank you for being here. We'll see you again next time.